Let's not sugarcoat this. You are not everyone's emergency contact. You are not the 2047 hotline for broken people who refuse to fix themselves. You are not here to be the solution for people who don't even recognize your value. Stop being so available. This is going to sting a little, but sometimes the truth does. You are exhausting your energy giving people VIP access to a version of you that they haven't earned. You reply instantly. You show up before they even ask. You bend your schedule, your priorities, even your dignity, to stay present for people who are only halfway there for you. That's not love. That's not loyalty. That's self-betrayal. Every time you rush to prove your worth to someone, you silently confirm that you doubt it yourself. And that is a dangerous lie to live. You're not supposed to be easy to reach. You're supposed to be respected, desired, valued. But none of that happens when your boundaries are invisible and your time is up for grabs. Let's talk about what availability really means. It's not just about texting back or showing up. It's about energetic accessibility. It's about being too emotionally open to people who have shown you repeatedly that they don't protect what you offer. You keep giving chances. You keep explaining your worth. You keep showing up to auditions for a role you already own. Stop. If someone can't recognize your light, they don't deserve your fire. People treat you the way you allow them to. When you make yourself constantly available, you teach them that your time is not sacred, that your presence is not a privilege, it's a guarantee. And the truth is, what's always available becomes forgettable. Rarity creates value. Scarcity builds respect, and space is where true desire breathes. This doesn't mean play games. This means reclaim your standard. Your time is not a consolation prize. Your presence should not be expected. It should be earned. And not everyone should have front row seats to your life. Being a woman of substance means protecting your peace with unshakable confidence, not with fear of being alone. Stop answering every call. Stop explaining your boundaries. Stop over-explaining your silence. The right people won't require your availability to feel your loyalty. They'll honor your space and respect your time. You don't need to prove your worth to be chosen. You need to own it to be remembered. Now let me be clear. This isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's about recognizing that every time you overextend, you undercut your own power. And powerful women don't chase validation. They command respect. You do that by being unavailable to chaos, unavailable to disrespect, unavailable to people who only remember your number when they need something. So here's your call to action: pull back. Recenter. Become intentional with your time, your energy, your presence. Make them rare. Make them meaningful. Let people earn access to the real you. Because the moment you stop being too available, you start being truly valued. And that shift, that's where your power lies. Being available without setting boundaries often stems from a deep desire to be needed, accepted, or loved. It feels like the right thing, to be present, supportive, and dependable. But over time, what begins as an act of love or generosity slowly transforms into a trap of self-neglect. You start to notice that people expect your help but rarely offer theirs. They seek your presence but don't honor your absence. And that's where the erosion begins. Not just of your time but of your value. When you make yourself constantly available, you send an unspoken message that your time isn't precious. That your energy doesn't need to be protected. That your needs come second to everyone else's. It doesn't matter how capable, kind, or loyal you are. If you don't honor your own limits, others won't either. Because people don't respond to your intentions. They respond to your standards. And when those standards are missing, you become an option instead of a priority. You begin to shrink yourself to fit into everyone else's world, hoping that by doing so, they'll make space for you in theirs. You respond to every message instantly, you drop what you're doing to accommodate someone else's crisis, and you say yes even when your soul is screaming no. At first it feels like connection. But eventually it feels like depletion, like being on call in your own life, constantly giving and rarely receiving. Availability without boundaries leads to imbalance in relationships, where you're always pouring and others are only sipping. You become a reservoir that everyone taps into, yet no one thinks to refill. And what's worse is, when you finally do pull back, people get upset. Not because they loved your presence, but because they grew entitled to your self-abandonment. They became addicted to your lack of limits. And then you start to feel guilty. You wonder if you're being too harsh. If maybe the problem is you. But the truth is, what you're feeling isn't guilt. It's discomfort from breaking a pattern of overgiving. A pattern that was never sustainable to begin with. You feel unsteady because you're finally stepping into your worth, and that shift always feels unfamiliar at first. Letting go of being constantly available doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious. Conscious of your capacity, your value, and your right to choose where your energy goes. It means realizing that not everyone deserves your time, and just because someone asks for your attention doesn't mean they're entitled to it. You start to ask yourself, does this serve me? Does this align with my peace? Is this a two-way connection or a one-sided transaction? When you have no boundaries, people start to associate your kindness with convenience. They stop seeing the effort behind your actions because they're so used to your presence being a given. That's how people begin to undervalue what you bring. Not because you're not extraordinary, but because you've allowed them to access you in ways that feel ordinary. The most powerful presence is the one that is intentional, not overextended. You don't earn love by being overly available. You don't gain respect by saying yes to everything. What truly commands admiration is discernment. The ability to say no with confidence, to show up when it matters, and to prioritize your own well-being without apology. You begin to shift from being accessible to being respected, and that's a transformation worth fighting for. The truth is, availability without boundaries is a slow betrayal of the self. It's a quiet erosion of identity, disguised as service, and the more you do it, the more invisible you become, not because you lack worth, but because you've failed to enforce it. You deserve to be seen, valued, and honored, not only by others, but first and foremost by yourself. So with every unreturned call, with every one-sided relationship, with every time you feel drained instead of uplifted, pause, reflect, and ask yourself if you're being too available at the cost of your own dignity. Because when your boundaries are invisible, your value becomes negotiable. And that is a price too high for any woman to pay. Emotional accessibility is not a giveaway. It is a privilege that must be earned through consistency, respect, and mutual effort. When you open the doors of your emotional world too easily, you hand over a sacred map to people who may not know how to navigate it, let alone protect it. Too often, women are conditioned to believe that vulnerability equals connection, but without discernment, it becomes a self-inflicted wound. Sharing your heart, your fears, your story too soon with the wrong people doesn't build intimacy. It builds openings for misuse and misunderstanding. You are not required to be an open book to anyone who glances at your cover. Emotional access is not an automatic setting. It should be manual, filtered, and highly selective. Just because someone shows interest doesn't mean they're prepared to handle what's beneath the surface. They may enjoy your softness without honoring your strength, or crave your warmth without respecting the fire it takes to keep it burning. And when people aren't emotionally equipped, your vulnerability becomes ammunition in the wrong hands. The most painful wounds are not caused by strangers, but by those you allowed into your inner space without proving they deserve to be there. You taught them your language before they ever learned how to listen. You exposed your insecurities hoping it would foster connection, only to watch them be dismissed or used against you. That's not because you were weak. It's because you were too generous with a currency that should have been guarded. There is strength in emotional expression, but there is also strength in emotional restraint. Not everyone gets to see you break down. Not everyone gets to know what keeps you up at night. The idea that openness equals authenticity has been twisted. True authenticity isn't spilling your soul to anyone who asks. It's knowing who's earned the right to hear your truth. It's recognizing that withholding is not hiding. It's honoring. You don't have to prove how deep you are by drowning people in your depth. Every piece of your emotional landscape holds power. Your hopes, your wounds, your dreams. When someone has access to that, they hold influence over how you feel about yourself and your experiences. That influence should never be handed over freely. Just like you wouldn't hand your house keys to someone you just met, you shouldn't hand your emotional keys to someone just because they're curious. Curiosity is not commitment. Interest is not investment. Words are not worth unless they're backed by action. The truth is, not everyone is ready for you, not your intensity, not your truth, not your depth. And when you confuse connection with compatibility, you start offering pieces of yourself to people who haven't done the emotional labor to carry them responsibly. You're left feeling exposed, unheard, and disappointed, not because you weren't enough, but because they were never capable. That realization comes too late when your emotions have already been spilled in places they were never safe. What you share should be a reflection of trust, not desperation. Too often, emotional accessibility is mistaken for a shortcut to intimacy, when in fact it should be the result of it. You can't skip the process and expect the outcome to last. Let people show you who they are with time, with action, with consistency, before you offer them the treasures of your heart. You're not cold for holding back. You're wise. You're not distant for protecting yourself. You're discerning. There is honor in being a safe space, but there's also wisdom in protecting your own. People should earn the privilege of sitting with your silence, understanding your triggers, witnessing your growth. And that earning doesn't come from charm or chemistry. It comes from patience, from emotional safety, from how they hold you when you're vulnerable. You must stop giving people the right to know you deeply when they haven't shown they know how to value you fully. This doesn't mean close yourself off, or build walls so high no one can reach you. It means build a door with a lock that only opens when someone proves they have the key, and the responsibility to use it gently. Your emotional world is rich, complex, and worthy of protection. Let that be your new standard. Emotional access is no longer free. It is a sacred exchange that must be earned with truth, honor, and time. Constant validation seeking weakens your power, because it places your self-worth in the hands of others. The moment you rely on external approval to feel good about yourself, you surrender control of your identity. You start to perform instead of live, bending your behavior to fit what others find acceptable or admirable. You chase compliments like oxygen, needing someone else to tell you who you are, because you haven't solidified it within yourself. And every time you look outward for that confirmation, you step further away from your own truth. Validation is not inherently wrong. We all want to be seen, to be appreciated, to feel understood. But when that desire becomes a need, when your mood shifts depending on someone else's reaction, you lose grip on your power. You become a puppet to perception. Your choices are no longer rooted in your values or vision, but in how they will be received, how many likes they'll get, how much approval they'll earn. That's not empowerment. That's dependency in disguise. The danger with needing validation is that it keeps you in a constant state of performance. You put on the mask that gets the most praise, and over time, you forget who you are underneath it. You silence your voice when it's too raw. You shrink your power when it's too loud. You dilute your opinions when they're too different. You stop being yourself and start being palatable. But the world doesn't need more women who are easy to digest. It needs women who are rooted, unwavering, and unbothered by applause. The moment you detach from validation, you begin to reclaim your energy. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I respect who I'm becoming?" That shift is where power lies. When your actions come from alignment instead of approval, you become unstoppable. You start to act with intention, not reaction. You say no without guilt. You show up fully, even if it makes others uncomfortable, because your power is no longer dependent on whether someone else claps for it. The constant hunger for validation makes you easy to manipulate. People learn quickly what to say to keep you in line, to keep you agreeable, to keep you quiet. You become emotionally predictable. You respond to praise like a trained reflex. And when that praise is withheld, you begin to question everything about yourself. That kind of fragility is not who you are. It's who you've become from being too addicted to affirmation. Real confidence isn't loud or desperate. It's quiet, steady, and self-sourced. When you step away from the need to be validated, you realize that not being liked is not a threat. It's freedom. You don't need to be understood by everyone to be powerful. You don't need to be praised to be valuable. You don't need constant reassurance to stay grounded. You just need to decide, daily, to validate yourself. To affirm your worth without asking for permission. To trust your intuition more than someone else's opinion. This internal shift doesn't happen overnight. It comes from unlearning years of being conditioned to seek gold stars for existing, for performing, for achieving. It comes from reminding yourself that being overlooked doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means you're no longer playing a game that was never designed for you to win. You stop seeking applause for things that should have been self-evident from the start: your intelligence, your beauty, your resilience, your voice. Power is quiet confidence. It's doing the right thing when no one is watching. It's trusting your own reflection when the mirror of society distorts your image. It's standing in a room where no one validates you and still choosing to stand tall. That's real strength. That's the kind of power no one can give you, and no one can take away. When you stop chasing validation, you start living with clarity. You realize who you are isn't a performance. It's a presence. It's not the edited version of you, it's the raw, unapologetic core. And from that place, you attract different energy. People who see you, not just the surface. People who respect you, not just admire your image. Because you're no longer adjusting yourself for praise. You're standing rooted in your truth. The more you self-validate, the less noise you need. You start to hear your own voice louder than the crowd. You choose your values over popularity. You move with intention, not desperation. And in that stillness, in that certainty, you rediscover the power that was never lost, only hidden behind the applause you thought you needed. Reclaiming your time is not just about scheduling or productivity. It is about self-respect. Time is the most valuable currency you have, and how you spend it reflects how much you value yourself. Every time you give away your hours to things, people, or habits that drain you, you send a message to your own soul that your life belongs to everyone but you. And for many women, that happens quietly, over years of saying yes too quickly, showing up too often, and putting their own needs last in the name of love, loyalty, or fear of being misunderstood. There comes a point when you look around and realize your days have been hijacked by obligations that don't serve you, commitments that don't fulfill you, and people who don't value you. That realization is sobering because it forces you to admit you've been available for everything but yourself. You've mastered the art of showing up for others and forgotten how to show up for your own peace. And the truth is, power cannot grow in chaos. It needs space, focus, and boundaries to expand. Time is how you shape your legacy. It's how you build what matters. When your time is constantly scattered and consumed by things that are beneath your value, you lose touch with your own greatness. You cannot create, grow, or evolve when you are stuck in a cycle of reactive living. Reclaiming your time means refusing to be on autopilot. It means making conscious decisions about what gets your energy, and who gets access to the most sacred parts of your day. You have been conditioned to think that being busy means being important, that giving everything to everyone means you're being good, selfless, worthy. But business without purpose is just avoidance, and constantly pouring into others without replenishing yourself is not noble. It's dangerous. It slowly chips away at your self-worth until exhaustion becomes your default state. Reclaiming your time means breaking that cycle and reprogramming your life to serve your growth instead of your guilt. It takes courage to withdraw your time from where it has been misused, to say no to invitations, to silence distractions, to pull back from conversations that go nowhere. But that courage is necessary if you want to build anything of depth. You cannot create clarity, purpose, or power if your time is owned by chaos. You need silence. You need solitude. You need to become unavailable to everything that does not elevate you. The moment you reclaim your time, you start to realign with who you really are. You remember what brings you peace, what stirs your creativity, what fuels your soul. You realize how much of your exhaustion had nothing to do with your capacity, and everything to do with how little of your life actually belonged to you. When you reclaim your time, you stop surviving and start choosing. You stop reacting and start leading. This process isn't always graceful. It may be met with resistance, guilt, or even pushback from people who benefited from your constant availability. But don't mistake their discomfort for your wrongness. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. You're not cold for guarding your time. You're not difficult for wanting intentionality. You are simply shifting into alignment, and that shift always disrupts those who are comfortable with your self-neglect. Time is your power, and power requires protection. You don't owe your hours to every request or every relationship. Reclaiming your time means giving yourself permission to be selective, to prioritize rest, stillness, and intentional creation, to recognize that not every text needs a reply, not every call deserves an answer, and not every opportunity aligns with your purpose. This is how you begin to rebuild. One boundary at a time, one no at a time, one deliberate hour at a time. You begin to trust yourself again when you take control of your time. You begin to feel grounded. Your energy shifts. Your standards rise. You stop rushing, and instead, you start moving with clarity. You start replacing urgency with purpose. You no longer feel like life is happening to you. You start to shape it with every decision, every schedule, every hour that now belongs to you. This is the work of a woman stepping into her power. She is no longer a passive participant in her own life. She is the architect of her days, the gatekeeper of her energy, and the protector of her purpose. Her time is no longer up for grabs. It is a sacred offering, given only to what honors her growth and reflects her worth.